This recording was produced by the KAYNBAKODESH Studios in Los Angeles.
Good evening and welcome to the CHANA alumni event with DEVORA, KRASNIANSKI. DEVORA is a dating and relationship coach who really gets you, the young people of today. She also is the founder of a wonderful website and an organization called Adayad, and it's dedicated to helping youngsters with Shidduchim, marriages, how to keep a good, happy marriage. It's not just you walk under the chuppah and then magic. There's fantastic articles and podcasts to listen to, so you must check it out. DEVORA and her website are brimming with a wealth of resources and guidance. On her website, you'll find recordings of professional speakers, experts addressing a full range of topics that you'll really enjoy and find insightful. DEVORA will enlighten us tonight with her wisdom and insight, shining a light on navigating the Shidduch journey. In the schus of coming together from all four corners of the world, Hashem will certainly open up the channels of unlimited chesed and brachos to help you all find your bashert with ease and clarity. Please sit back and enjoy. So we're very lucky tonight to have with us Mrs. Duni Mishalevin, who will share with us some beautiful words of Torah. Duni, please take it away.
Hi, thank you, Mrs. Perl. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to address everyone here tonight. And thank you, Mrs. KRASNIANSKI. I've listened to several things on Adayad, and they've been really, inspiring and helpful. I've shared it with other people. So thank you for all you do. And thank you, everyone, for participating tonight. I'm in Shidduchim now from a mom perspective. And I date my husband. You don't stop dating when you get married. So how does one prepare to date and to marry when you don't know who he's going to be, what he's going to look like, when you're going to meet him, what he's really going to be like? And it reminds me of another question. The question is, how do we prepare for Mashiach when we don't know how or when he's coming, what's really going to happen when he comes? So I think that the preparation is actually very, very similar. It's about making ourselves ready. And then we trust in Hashem and we trust in Hashem's plan. So right now we're in the middle of the 9 days. Tisha B'Av is coming up fast, pun intended. We know that the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed. So we can't bring karbanos, we can't have all the Avaida, we can't have the Kehanim and the Leviim singing, can't do all that. So what are we doing? What do we do? So we fulfill the mitzvah to the best of our ability. We say karbanos. We daven to Hashem, we ask for Mashiach, we learn about Mashiach, and we are asked to build a Mashiach mindset within ourselves. So while we're in Galus, it's a huge challenge, especially now, tremendous upheaval in our communal health, in politics, in education, in the economy, everywhere you look. It's up to us to have this Mashiach mindset and to be free. And I think that's why tonight is so important. And the choice we're all making here, we're showing Hashem that we're choosing to live with a charta v'chaim. We're pursuing shidduchim. We're pursuing building Jewish homes. And not only that, we're getting together more than before. This is tremendous. We're from all over the world to learn and support each other and help each other. So Yasher Kayach to all of us for really choosing to live. And this is a big keli for brachas. So how do we prepare ourselves? So what I'm going to say is really not only for people looking for shidduch, because these same concepts apply during marriage and on a level to everybody. So it's not like we prepare for marriage and then we stop preparing, but then we're actually living it. Well, how do we do this? We find the Beis HaMikdash within ourselves. That's where it starts. It starts in the core of our lives. It's the one thing that we have control over. So let's say I want to build a Beis HaMikdash in me. So imagine cleaning yourself of all uncleanliness with a kiyar. Imagine having passion of the fire, of the carbon, of the making a carbon, that passion for yourself, for your neshama, for Hashem, for the Jewish people, after marriage, for your husband. Imagine lighting up the world like a menorah with inspiring others and helping others. Imagine being dressed in beautiful linen garments and gold and jewels and choosing beautiful tznius clothing for yourself. Imagine the shulchan. A shulchan is a table where we eat. What do we eat? We eat from the Torah to absorb the nutrients and the life-giving power of Torah knowledge. And imagine the quiet, intimate holiness of the Holy of Holies, where we're at our most connected, and it's those special times when we're just at our best. So we're building a world in our psyche. We're creating like a physical world, a spiritual world, and this affects our physical world. So every single day we can honor our neshama, we can honor the base hamikdash ma'at that each one of us is, and we can experience Hashem. You know, Hashem is everywhere. He's all over the world, right? What's special about the Beis Hamikdash is in the Beis Hamikdash, you experience Hashem. He's not only there, but you feel him. So this is what we want, that not only is Hashem in our lives, but we feel him. And this brings tremendous brachas. So and when we get married, we extend the Beis Hamikdash that we extend that into our homes. And that's how we create a Mikdash Ma'at. So I give a bracha, all of you listening and everyone listening to the recording, Be'ezus Hashem, you should find your Beis HaMikdash within you and feel connected, feel loved by Hashem, and be blessed with a Shidduch speedily and with clarity and joy, and we should all celebrate together in the big Beis HaMikdash.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mrs. Michelevin. If you don't have one yet, please designate a pushka in your home for Hachnasas Kala and give 18 cents a day. It does wonders, I'm telling you. It's been proven. So that's a great hachlata to take on. It's truly an honor to do this event with the well-renowned DEVORA KRASNIANSKI. If you are looking for clarity before, during, or after dating, DEVORA is an expert Shidduch coach who has guided many young men and women through the dating process and to the chuppah. Please have a notebook and a pen handy to take notes. You will learn a lot of new things tonight. Without further ado, DEVORA. Firstly, DEVORA, can you please share with us briefly what it is you do and how you got into this work?
Yes, I'm DEVORA KRASNIANSKI, and I founded Adayad several years ago as a passion project because I noticed that there were gaps in what people thought about marriage, thought about the Shidduch process, and what was actually happening. And I'm not sure where the gaps came from, but I love people, and I don't like when people go through challenges that they don't have to have. So I thought I would just provide some resources and provide some courses and about dating, and then eventually I moved into the engagement and early marriage arena. So if you check out our website, they have lots of resources in those areas. And then later on we got a grant for domestic abuse. That's not to say that it's in the same proportions at all, but that's where our grant came from, so we address that as well. So in the role that I do, I speak to young people, all speak to parents as well, and I speak to shadchanim. So I have a real sense of what's going on in the Shidduch world and in the early marriage world, and so we try to address those so that people have less challenges and more excitement and more happiness as they go through these different journeys of life. So that's what Adayad does. Published our first book, so I'm very excited to share that. So we gave that out for my son's wedding recently.
Wow, is that available on Amazon? You can give me the link.
It's self-published, not yet. It's so new, it just came out.
I'd like to ask you some questions, and maybe you can enlighten us. My first question is, I'm sick of the dating system. Please help me.
Okay. The dating system. There is really no system. It just is something that happens in more or less in the same way, but it's not a devised system. And that's possibly why we get frustrated, because there is no exact system. On the other hand, there can't be an exact system because everyone is unique, every situation is unique, every family is unique, every time is unique. So we have to really get to understand the core of what our part in it is in it and what we can do. So what do people dislike about the general way that shidduchim happen? One is, and I can just talk from the many people I've spoken to, some people don't like having to meet a shadchan and describe themselves in 20 words or less, or in a half hour or less. Some people don't like the waiting, between shidduchim. Some people don't like talking to the shadchan, whatever it is. But this is what it is. If you have a goal, you have to work through the way that it's being done. If you want to learn how to swim across the English Channel, you're going to have to work through it. Firstly, you have to get permission to do that, and all kinds of things. There's hurdles in anything that's worthwhile. And while some people have less hurdles and they go through it easier, it doesn't mean that it's easy. And so, yes, it's not all that exciting when it's not exciting, but it is what it is. And for some people, the journey is longer. And we'll talk later about don't waste the waiting. But yes, firstly acknowledge it is what it is. And as soon as you recognize that it is what it is, it makes it a little bit easier. Just because somebody else had a different journey doesn't mean, or seemingly accelerated journey or a simpler journey, doesn't mean they didn't have challenges along the way. And this is what is yours, your journey. And so it is what it is. And we'll talk about something to make it easier and to make it more fun and to make it exciting and make it so that matches your personality better. But it is what it is. Now let's break down some of the elements as far as working with a shadchan, as far as what to talk about, sharing about myself privately, my personal, my private. I think a lot of the questions that came in address those. Instead of just me rambling, I think we go in the order of the questions that came in. And then we'll go and wrap up with this question at the end.
Awesome. Thank you. What if I don't want to talk to my parents about the date? My mother is doing a lousy job in finding shidduchim. What do I do?
Okay. So there's a few things here. For some people, their mother or their parents are great advocates for them, and they talk well, and they can really understand each other. For many people, it doesn't work that simply. For a variety of reasons, whether it's for some, and be honest with yourself, and there's no judging, and it just is, again, it is what it is. But for some people, you got to the age that you're at, and you don't have a strong relationship with your parents, or your parents are not good listeners, or they're judgmental, or they're whatever it is. Your parents don't have to take on that role of advocate for you. I use the word advocate when I talk about the role of someone acting as your agent, as your advocate. It does not have to be your parent. It could be a good friend. It could be your sister-in-law. It could be your sister. It could be your mashpia. It could be somebody else, someone that you like in the community. It doesn't have to be your parent. Now, it may be a little bit difficult to tell that to your parent, and we can talk about it for a second, how you might tell your parent, I love you, and at the same time, I don't think that you're going to be the person who's going to be doing all the advocating for me. But it's not unheard of. It's not even so unusual to have someone else advocate for you. How to tell your parent, and some of the reasons why people don't want to use the parents in that role is, I mean, just, for some people it's hard to tell their parents, I don't want a spouse like you. I don't want a marriage like yours. So how are you going to tell that to your parent? It's so much easier to tell your mashpia, I don't want that, than to have to be kept reminded. And it's hard for your parent to hear it. So I could understand why you skirt around it. But when you're skirting around those topics, no one's getting the fullness of what you're looking for, and they can't be a good advocate for you. So you don't have to use your parents. And if they're doing a lousy job, well, maybe they are doing a good job, but they're not coming up with, sometimes you do a good job and you're still getting to the right people. It doesn't mean they're doing a lousy job. It could be that they're doing their best. You're unique, and it's hard to find someone who matches your uniqueness. So while they're not maybe being successful in finding you good dates, let's not think of it as a lousy job. But ultimately, of course, you want the goal of getting good dates, and eventually, and ultimately, you're shidduch and get married successfully. This is why some people don't like the Zooming, but I guess you see my patience, you see my perseverance, you see lots of different things from Zoom dating. Okay, we'll just skip to the Zoom question about Zoom dating, because that was an example. You can, when you Zoom date, you can see someone's humor, how they handle things like that. So I think I did okay. But yeah, so, but you can see a lot about my personality. So that's another reason why I really do enjoy the Zoom dating, because there's always technology issues and you get to see the personality through it.
I find Shidduch dating an unnatural conversation. What can I do to make it easier for me? What balance would you suggest between being fully present, presenting your best self on a date, and not being too forward-leading, someone on unintentionally? In other words, at an early point when you don't know yet if things will progress. It's a very tricky, fine line.
Yeah. Okay. So there's two parts to this question, and I think they're both important parts, and I'm glad we just kind of merge them into one. So I'll talk about the conversations to have and the conversations not to have, at least at the beginning. So firstly, for someone who doesn't like dating, or this unnatural, you're being told to meet somebody, I'm going to guess that you're more of an introvert by personality, because extroverts like meeting people. Introverts don't like meeting people. They like meeting people that they know that they're going to enjoy having conversations with. So as an introvert, firstly, just recognize it is what it is who you are. While somehow the Western culture has decided that extroverts is more common and better, introverts are more have brought more accomplishments to the world. So the world needs both. I'm an introvert myself. I'm not shy. I love talking about what I love talking about, but I don't do small talk. I don't see the point in small talk. I'm not interested in telling you how I feel if you're not really interested in getting to know how I really feel. My day is going lousy. So I don't do the small talk thing well. And as a matter of fact, I don't recommend doing small talk and dating. I think that part of what we don't like about this unnatural dating is that I'm not really interested in the small talk. Many people. Some people can talk about anything and they don't mind the dating. They just enjoy socializing. But most people don't like the talking about things that don't really matter. Like people call them the weather dates. I don't need to talk about the weather. Unless the weather is really unusual, the weather dates are boring. So I like to suggest that people talk about things that are personal. I'm not talking about private, things that are personal. Instead of talking about, oh, so you're a lawyer, so what do you do all day? Which is, to me, small talk. It's more personal and thus more interesting and important for dating, especially, is what got you into law? What did you like about family law? What's the backstory? I love the question, what's the backstory? Now you're starting to really get to know the other person, which is really where relationships happen, but then you're also getting to understand how people think and how different people are in the world. Or you might ask, what's your favorite place that you traveled? What about that was so interesting to you? And make your conversations interesting. And I do a whole course on conversations for dating, but one of the things that's super important, one of the key takeaways, is put out hooks in the conversation and pick up on the hooks. What I mean by hook is, how conversations go, and you talk about this, and then you get onto another tangent, and you get into another tangent, and it's like, how did we get here? Because people picked up on different hooks and moved the conversation along. What I mean by hook is when someone asks you the question, so what did you do last summer? And you say, I went to Spain. Okay, you answer the question technically, but you're not providing anything for the conversation to move along. If someone says, what did you do last summer? Well, it's not a great question, because it's not close-ended or yes and no question. It's not a yes and no question, close-ended, but it's pretty much close-ended. But even if you were asked a close-ended question, you can still open it. You can say, I went to Spain and I took a cooking class and I really enjoyed it. Now you left some hooks. You went to Spain, you took a cooking class, and now the other person can pick up on, what was it like in Spain? Why did you choose Spain? What do you do? Of all things, you chose cooking class. What did you do there? What did you cook? What was it like to cook in a cooking class that wasn't kosher? There's so many pieces that they can pick up on, and you can take the conversation. If you're the one who picked up on, you were the provided the hook, you can take it down whichever way you want. And then you can really enjoy the conversation more. You can get to understand the world through other people's eyes. And that's what makes conversation interesting, and that's what makes you interesting. And when you hear what other people do and how they see the world, you can take on new perspectives, which is what we always do in a marriage. You don't have to have the same exact hobbies. You come in as two separate people and you merge your two lives, and you can continue having separate hobbies. So you have to continue asking, what was it like? What do you do? And why do you do it? And what, so things like that. So make the dating more interesting for yourself. You may pre-plan some hooks that you're going to leave and see how the other person picks it up, but talk about a topic that you enjoy and come with questions that you want to find out about how they see the world. Not only because you want to see how they see the world, but to see the world through somebody else's eyes. So that makes dating more interesting in any way. Especially if you heard that they're a big traveler and you're somewhat interested in travel, then mill it for some questions about the next places of travel. So that's about the kinds of conversations to make it more interesting. You know what topics, you know what hooks to leave, and now I taught you a little bit about how to pick up on hooks. But important for you to leave hooks around so that the conversation flows. One of the things I get a lot is that she's not much of a talker, or he's not much of a talker. Now, she may be a good talker with her friends, but you didn't ask open-ended questions. You didn't put out hooks. So it makes it harder. But if you know that you should be leaving hooks and picking up on hooks, then you will probably have a much richer, funner, more fun conversation.
Thank you. That's really helpful pointers. What topics should or should not be addressed in the first 3 dates? How do I bring up uncomfortable topics?
Okay, so again, I like when they have those two questions put together. You know your life story. You know what you have to share in order for the other person to know and be to know that they want a life together with you. There's an old idea of hiding some things. In that category of hiding things might have been hiding about medical conditions, or hiding about mental health conditions, hiding about the weird uncle, or the sick uncle or aunt. So while I don't think that was ever a wise decision, it's certainly not a wise decision today. Worse than the information coming out is the betrayal and the lack of trust. So everyone has a story. Everybody has a something. You own your something. And so and pre-plan how you're going to roll it out. How much you're going to say now. And you'll see how they respond to it, how much they accept it, what kind of questions. And then you'll roll out part 2. And you'll roll out part 3. So you own what you have to share. You know exactly what you have to share for someone to know if they want to join your life. They may have other questions, but you know what it is. So some of these things, and we'll talk about, if we talk about something like medical conditions, I think a medical condition is part of who you are. And it probably added to your personality by having this medical condition. You're probably a stronger person, unless you're not a stronger person. But most people became stronger, empathetic, see the world in colors and not just black and white. They're just interesting people because they had an interesting experience. So if you have, and also people with interesting family backgrounds and all kinds of things, you're just a more interesting person. And interesting, I think, is a huge compliment. I don't mean interesting as a euphemism for weird. I think it's a great thing to be interesting and to have a story, and you have a reason why you're so passionate about whatever you're passionate about. So again, because you own the story, it's your story, you know how to roll it out. So for example, if you have a medical condition, so you don't have to say in the first date, you don't have to say in the second date, but you start preparing for sharing it. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm so passionate about Chai Lifeline, and I volunteer, and I go to Camp Simcha and whatever else. So you mentioned that in day 1 and day 2, because you're preparing to share that I have a family medical condition, and that's why I'm so excited, so passionate about it. Now the person has seen how interesting you are and how wonderful you are, and then you give the backstory it's not like as if you're manipulating them. You're rolling it out in an order that makes sense. So you share how wonderful, how you share the part that it makes you so wonderful because of that situation, and then you lay out what it is. So that's what to share in the first, second, third date is one of the things is you're preparing to share deeper more about yourself. Other things, like I said, is to share things that are personal. Don't, like, I've heard people say, I just want you to know this about me. And if you're not interested, I'm not going to waste my time with you, or going to waste my time dating. That's just not how it works. You have to roll it out slowly. It's not as if you can say, I just want you to know that when I was in 5th grade, I took drugs and whatever. Like, I just want you to know that about me. That's not the way relationships unroll and develop. It just doesn't. So you know the parts that you have to share. You need support to figure out the language you want to use, how to break it up. You might do that with your parents if they're involved and they understand it. You might do it with a mashpia, and generally those are the kind of things that you might do with a coach, because they really know language and how to unpack it in a reasonable drip situation, a little bit at a time, not to dump it. And everyone has something. We just have to figure out how to present it. And we're not finessing it and lying about it. Everyone's something has made them who they are. It's just a matter of the order that you're presenting it, and the language, and the confidence. It's not something that you are disclosing, and so you're preparing to disclose it. You're preparing to share it. It's part of who you are. Your role as a dater is to make it, one of the parts is to make sure that you are accepted as you are. You're accepted with the weird, crazy uncle, and you're accepted with your medical condition, and you're accepted with whatever it is. So when people used to hide things, and then they used to take the medicine hiding under the blanket or whatever it is, that's ludicrous for a life. But to hide it and then hope that it never comes up, everything comes up. Because you're living with someone side by side, you're making decisions together. So the betrayal of not sharing it is awful, but it is part of who you are. And so just live like it is part of who you are, and it comes out of your language like it's part of who you are. But most importantly, you want to know that you are accepted with everything that we are, and everyone has something. So much so that you want to make sure that you're accepted, that you actually want to hear how they understand it. It's not as if, I said it. I don't know if he heard it or not, but I said it. No, you want to know that he accepts you with all of you. So you actually can seriously ask, I'm not sure if I explained it fully. Can you tell me how you understand what I just said? So you're taking the onus on yourself. If he misunderstood, then I'm the one who didn't say it fully, or didn't say it in a language that he can understand. That's a whole different conversation of saying the difference between so what you're saying and so what I hear. But that's a whole different conversation. I love these semantic things and how it lands on other people, but that's not what I'm talking about now.
Thank you. And you as a coach would help girls figure out the right approach and so on.
Right.
Okay. Can you talk about taking a break? How do I break up with someone? I have been dumped so many times. I feel very discouraged.
Okay. So there you go. I was talking about semantics. The language we use makes a big difference on how it lands on us. So taking a break, or dumped, or breaking up with someone, it's all in the language, and they're all different. They're all different parts of the dating journey. Let's look at the one of taking a break. Now, or dumping someone, or I was dumped. Actually, let's go with dumped first. You were not dumped. You were seeing if this is a relationship, if this can turn into a marriage, and for whatever reason, he recognized first that this is not going to be a good marriage. You could be disappointed because you didn't see it yet. So you thought this was going somewhere. But if he sees that it's not going to be a good marriage, or good for marriage for him, or there's something about you that he can't accept, and he doesn't even want to tell you what it is. It's just he doesn't want to make you feel bad or whatever it is. He's the one who recognized it first. But eventually you have recognized it also. And so if someone recognized it first. So it's not dumping. Dumping is awful. You dump garbage. or you place trash in the garbage bin. But no one's dumped. You were trying something out, seeing if this will move to a marriage, and we recognize that it doesn't. So no one's dumped. It's just someone recognized first that this is not going to turn into a marriage. As far as taking a break, the semantics there is not as bad. Breaking up with someone is, what do you mean you're breaking? You were trying this to see if this will turn into a marriage, and we recognize that we won't. We're not breaking up with someone, unless we're just using quick words without even realizing how they land on people. So we're just using some syllables to say that. But really, it does land on someone. It does land in our heart and in the way we receive it. So I much prefer, again, coaching language, and I'm sensitive to language. I recognize that this is not going to take us to a marriage. That's it. That's what the situation is. As far as taking a break, it's really a whole different question, and I really want to answer that. We see in the Rebbe's letters, sometimes the Rebbe said to take a break. He didn't use those words. He didn't speak in English, for starters, but to take some time. The thing is, what do you do with this time? So firstly, I'm going to use the word take a break just because it's the words that we use, and I haven't really found a quick way to say we're going to take some time so I can reevaluate, so I can consider what's going on. But take a break is the quick words for I want to take some time and some headspace to really think about what's going on here, to think about what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing. Okay, but I'm going to use the word take a break. Whenever you determine to take a break, you both have to be very clear about what the parameters mean. Well, does take a break mean that we're not going to talk to each other, and the other one is thinking that, but that doesn't really mean he's not going to text me good Shabbos, which is a whole different question about texting. But that's a separate piece. As you have to both be very clear what it means to be on this break. It means that we're not going to talk to each other, and I may even come back after my week and say, I realized that this is not going to turn into a marriage, and basically I'm not even going to meet you again. Both have to recognize that that's one of the outcomes. But you both realize that in a week I will let the shadchan know, and that's why you might keep the shadchan involved. In a week I will let the shadchan know where my head is up to, what I've come to. Because if you think that I have to come back in a week, there's a different stress. If you know that you can come back and say this is not going to turn into a marriage, you think more clearly. So again, the parameters have to be very clear. If you say that we're going to each take a week and we'll come back in a week and we'll share with each other, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you want to do. But both of you should know that we'll text good Shabbos. I think you shouldn't during this break. But it has to be very clear. So no one's saying, he didn't even text me, how rude. Because when her friend had a break, he did text. No, be as clear and upfront as possible. And what you should be doing in this time is really evaluating how you feel, how you experienced him. What are the questions you still have? How do you, if I do come back, and maybe at the end of the week you will think that I do want to come back and ask these questions. So you use this time to really clarify what's niggling in your mind. What is the question? So that's what you use this time for. But in my perspective, it's a break that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to come back. And that helps you think more clearly.
Why don't guys want to come to LA to date?
You're lucky it's LA and not Winnipeg in the winter. LA is a lovely place to visit, and it's probably one of the easiest places, but still it's leaving home, it's leaving work. It's not as if leaving home like leaving mommy's home. It's leaving what's familiar, his familiar schedule, his familiar minion, it's his familiar work, his familiar whatever it is. So before Zoom and before COVID, and people didn't realize that they could work remotely or learn remotely, it was even more difficult. Now people people themselves see, and their bosses see that they could work remotely. But just till recently, people, when they came out to anywhere, they were missing work days. It was in addition to the cost, and in addition to being in a foreign city. Now, LA, like I said, is not a bad place to go, but small town USA or cold town USA in the winter is not ideal for someone to want to come out. So they have to really know that there's a good chance. So I'm so excited that COVID came about, because now Zoom has been normalized. So you start off with a Zoom conversation or two. You see that this is something I really want to explore further. Then the coming out to California or Winnipeg is a little bit more palatable. But just to fly to California, because I don't know, it was difficult for people. Not only the money part, but the time on an I don't know. So, like I said, you're lucky it's California, not Winnipeg, but you can understand that. Now, I think Zoom has become normalized. At the beginning of Zoom, at the beginning of COVID, I did a talk on long distance dating, and part of it was, Zoom, and how to date on Zoom, and this is all recorded and available on the website. Part of it was 6 feet apart dating, and the ideas were like sitting in two cars in the parking lot next to each other and talking, at least you can see each other. But that, I think, has really become obsolete mostly, except for a few families that have are compromised and they really want to be super careful. But the Zoom piece, I still think, is still relevant. And on that recording, I talk about some practical tips of Zoom. And as you saw earlier, with Zoom, you can get to really see someone's personality in a way that when people are behaving themselves properly in the car, driving, and into the busboy, they're acting a little bit more on track, because it's typical behavior. And Zoom gives you all kinds of ways to shine or not shine. So that's California. Go ahead.
How important is physical attraction? And how can I know if I can live with the other person's faults, negative sides, from just meeting him for a bunch of hours?
Okay. So they are related, and I'm going to break them apart and then bring them back together. Physical attraction. Now, we all have friends that are not in the, when you look at them from, when you're talking to them, you enjoy the conversation, and you're not really seeing them, except for sometimes you stand back and you say, her nose is really longer than most people's, and whatever, not that it really matters, but most of the time you don't notice it because you're enjoying being with the person. And that's what you're looking for. If you don't like the person's looks or his weight, or he's huge and you're tiny, and whatever it is, those are all superficial to the real person. It's understandable, but it's superficial to the real person, because if you really enjoyed being with the person, it wouldn't bother you as much. It may bother you compared to your preconceived notion of who you might marry, and you have to work through that. But for many people, they just use, I just don't like his looks, or don't like her looks, as a quick saying reason, like, I'm not going to go further. And they can't, many times it's because they can't be bothered self-assessing or assessing what's really niggling at them. So it's very easy to use I don't like his looks, or I don't like her looks. But you shouldn't leave it at that. Ask yourself the question, or you really work with somebody, your parents should be helping you see it, and working through asking yourself some poignant questions. If he didn't look like that, or looks, do I enjoy his company? Do I enjoy the conversations? So that's really good to see if you really enjoy the person, or if there's something about the person that you don't enjoy or you're not sure about, and so you're just blaming it on the looks. And like someone says, I always thought I would marry a fit guy, and this guy is great, and I love his company, but he's way bigger than I thought. Way bigger than all my brothers-in-law and my brothers. So will he fit into my family? So ask yourself that question: if he didn't look like this, do I enjoy his conversations? So that's about looks.
Well, can I ask you, how would that help if you ask yourself that question?
Because many times, like I said, with your friends, you find them to be fascinating people. You really enjoy them as people, and then you realize that the looks is much less important, or the way she dresses. Like, you can have a friend who you would never dress like that, and but you just enjoy her company. So
you kind of separate.
You separate it, and then you see, is it by preconceived expectations, or is it something that I really can't look at? And really, what it comes out to be is that how do people who don't have the traditional, whatever that means, sense of beauty. How do they get married? Because people enjoy and like the person that they are, and the what they look like becomes less important to them because they really enjoy. They feel good around that person. The person helps them feel good about themselves. The person makes them laugh. The person has the same values, and it's someone that they really want in their lives, even if the look isn't what they really expected in the first place. So, for those of you who have preconceived, I always imagined that my wife would be blonde. Well, I'm talking to girls, so that's not a good example. I always imagined that my husband was 6 feet tall because all my brothers are, and my husband and my father is, and all my brothers-in-law are. So of course I want whatever 6 feet is important. Having these preconceived visions of what I'm attracted to is backwards. You are attracted to a kind of person, well, actually, who will help you have a fulfilled life.
Mm-hmm.
The look is extra. Sometimes there's going to be a particular look that just doesn't work, but really, it's something else that's niggling at you, and you're using the looks as the easy excuse. And that's the other part of the question. Yeah. How could I tell that I like someone, or I won't get nervous from his from certain aspects of who he is? So there's certain things that are like tics, certain little tics, like he wakes up in the morning and sneezes 25 times because he has allergies, whatever. It is annoying, not to say, or he snores. It is annoying, but that's not really the end all of your life. If his personality is something that is if he has, certain girls in your class, certain friends that you just don't like that personality that just rubs you the wrong way, and you find out that this person has that personality that rubs you the wrong way in a classmate. Now we all have certain attributes that we enjoy being around, and some people are very, very persistent, and that's great for certain parts of people, and some people really want a persistent husband who's going to make sure that whatever it is going to get done, and some people want a laid-back life. If you find out that this person has a more persistent, stubborn, determined personality, and that's really something that you don't like because you don't like it in three of your classmates and 2 of your coworkers, then you don't like it. It's not going to work for you. But everyone's going to have quirks, and everyone's going to pick up little things in life as it goes along. And what you're really looking for is someone who's going in the same direction as you, has the same values, has the same visions for a family life. These little things of he doesn't say the words exactly the way I would have wanted him to say. Yeah, so there's always going to be something. Dr. John Gottman, who's like the big marriage guru, says that in every marriage, there are going to be some conflicts that are unresolvable. You're just not going to resolve it. It's not possible. Everyone's going to have something. Even if you're the most easygoing person, there's something that you would have done differently, and you wish that the other person does differently. It's just part of marriage. But if you have the same values, same vision, the same direction that you're going, there's going to be just knowing that there's going to be little quirks. There's no one perfect, and even yourself, sometimes you annoy yourself. Why did I do that? So of course, if you annoy yourself, then there's going to be moments that you're going to annoy somebody else, and that means the flip of that is there's going to be moments that someone's going to annoy you. But mostly you're looking for someone who's walking toward the same end goal of life, the same goal in life that you are. The little quirks is you'll never find someone perfect. So I don't like to use the word get engaged. I think that we have to realize that we're actually committing to get married. So getting engaged is the way we announce to the world that we are committing to marrying this person. So I think that we have to realize the seriousness of getting married, and getting engaged somehow to me connotes a party and planning a wedding and shopping. No. Well, if it doesn't connote that to you, then that's fine. But I always use the words commit to marriage. And if you look on the website, you'll see what you should know about each other before you commit to marriage. So
we're on the website, so I can make a note of it.
Link, but if you go on the adayad.org, there's one of the things called Shidduch dating, and then the Shidduch you. What to know about each other before you commit to marriage. Like I mentioned before, you want to make sure that you are accepted with all that you are. So you want to make sure that you know that he knows all that you are, and you want to make sure that you accept him with all that he is. So if you've been forthcoming about all that you are, most likely he will mirror that, and he will be forthcoming with all that he is. So you want to make sure that you can accept all that he is. Other things that you want to make sure, there's a short checklist, but an important checklist, is you want to, and you always say, so this is what I know about you. You say things along those lines. This is what I know about you. Could you please fill in what I'm missing? And so things like that, because you both want to make sure that you're not deluding yourself. You also want to have this uncomfortable conversation, but you don't want to be on the wrong side of statistics on this. But you want to know that you want to know his drug history. Hopefully there wasn't that much drugs. You want to know his drinking history. You want to know his debt history. Even if he had student debt, you want to know, because when you're combining your finances and your credit scores, you just want to know it. You don't want major surprises, because if you get married legally and you put your finances together, you are responsible for his student debt. I mean, there are other ways to set it up, but these kind of things. You want to know about his internet porn addiction. And so these kind of things. It's not a fun conversation, but you also want to know about his criminal history. Because if you find out that he's a pedophile, you're not going to be very happy. So you ask it straight out. What's generally going to happen is, firstly, if he has some criminal history, if he's a pedophile, or if he has sexual abuse someone, and you say, I'm not going to support you if that's he may not, probably not, want to. He's looking for a little lemala. He's looking for someone who he can steamroll with that, and who's going to stay even if he has history. Now, it's a tiny number, like I said, but you don't want to be on the wrong side of statistics. So more likely he will end the shidduch than tell you the truth. But either way, it may be painful to end the shidduch, and it may be painful because he doesn't tell you why he ended the shidduch. But in the long run of your life, you are going to be glad that he ended the shidduch. So ask the question, as weird as it is, and you can say, Mrs. KRASNIANSKI told me to ask this question. But if you have a criminal history, I will not support you. And everyone knows a story or two of somebody who had a history, and it came out afterwards, and it's a big, messy mess. Many of the questions that you will bring are not the most comfortable parts of your life. It's not going to be super comfortable to share about yourself. There are things that we just don't like to discuss. Like I said, you want to make sure that you're accepted. And it's not easy to bring it up and ask him about it, like especially if you know that he has an interesting family story and he hasn't brought it up yet. Well, you have to bring it up. You want to know the truth. You want to know the full story. Now, if you were to be his wife or anybody's wife, you will have to have uncomfortable conversations. You may as well, and you should, check out, how do we have uncomfortable conversations? How nervous are you before? How was he accepting of your question? How do you feel afterwards? Did he blame you? Did he say that's ludicrous? Did he make you feel stupid? Did he say, I never thought of it that way? Shalom Task Force does a workshop about red flags before marriage. I'm noticing red flags during dating. And in that message, they say, do not commit to marriage. Well, she says get engaged, but I said, do not commit to marriage until you've had a conflict. It doesn't mean a fight. It means something that you have difference of perspective, difference of opinion, difference of schedule, and you want to experience how you have differences of opinion, how it works through. So check in not only on how the conversation went, but how you felt about it, how nervous you were before, how validating or not validating he was about your concerns. So if you ever have a situation when you're dating and you have I'm not sure what he meant by that, go back in and ask the question, because whoever you're going to marry, you're going to have differences of opinions. And you want to make sure that you are good enough about having these kinds of conversations.
Everyone is telling me to stop being so picky. How do I get them to stop badgering me?
Now, it's a little bit, it could be that you are being picky, whatever that means, that you have a very tight vision of what you're looking for. And a little bit could be that they are projecting their desperation. They just want to see you settled, whether it's your parent who just wants to be over this chapter, or your friends want to see you settled, or everyone just feels like, everyone should be married. Whatever they're projecting, you have to see, is there some truth to it, even if it's hard for you to admit? And it may be worth re-asking yourself, what is the vision? What is the life that I would like to have, and what kind of person do I need in my life to have that? Now, height is not something that you need in your life in order to have that. But a determined person, if you might be something that you really need to have. So it's worth looking at your list and seeing maybe I have put together too narrow of an expectation. On the other hand, it could be that your expectation is realistic and they're projecting. So if you are truly honest with yourself and you know that you're not picky, you just haven't found him yet, then you might say something along the lines of, I really thank you for your concern. I'm going to reevaluate what I'm looking for, and thank you for bringing it up to me. Basically, you're leaving them no hooks to bother you again.
So tell me about the time I'm wasting waiting for Shidduchim to come. I feel like it's a waste of time.
Well, it's not. It's God's plan for you. And if you sit around and mope, or if you sit around and say, oh, my married friends, they got married, they don't care about me anymore. If you are waiting for other people to help you, that's the wrong way to see it. Firstly, you have to be part of the plan. Yes, you can have other people help you, but don't wait for them. Don't blame your newlywed friends. You'll see when you get married how much time it takes. And the CHANA concept is very real. It's blending two lives together. So you'll have your time to see that, but don't rely on your married friends. Now that your friend has all the access to her husband's friends, not access, but knows about them or can sit down. It's not fair. It's not fair to them to expect that. You may ask them, please take 20 minutes of your time, and I'd love for your husband to jot down some friends that he has, but don't expect them to actually sit down and think about you. It'd be lovely if they can, but it's just for some friends it's not practical. But there's so much in this world to do, to get excited about, to happen. Just like I said earlier, with the get to see the world through other people. Well, get to see the world through yourself. There's not only travel. Travel's wonderful, and COVID eventually will be over and we can travel again, or even armchair travel. The world is so fascinating. Nobody can know everything about everything. And expand your horizons. Get involved in projects. The world is so desperate for good people to do things. And that will make you more interesting. It will make you stand out from several other profiles or several other people. And the world will be so much more blessed because you're doing something. If you sit around and mope, then you're wasting the weight. But if you're not, and you're doing something amazing because you have more time than somebody who doesn't have more time, you can be doing so much for the world, and it really will enrich your life, and your married life will be so much more enriched. Have a sense of fulfillment now and later for all the work that you are doing. The more you're involved in different things, the more people get to know you. I get to know the volunteers of certain projects I'm working on. And while I never came up with a Shidduch, but I'm always trying. But if the person stays home and mopes and never goes out to anyone except goes to eat by their grandmother's house or only at home, you're less interesting. You have less opportunity to become interesting, and less people know you. So maximize from the time. There's a world to explore and to do and experience, and proactively help people get to know you. So if you're sitting at a Shabbos table and you're shy, pre-plan 3 things that you're going to drop about yourself. Drop three. You don't have to talk and be lively and whatever at the Shabbos table, but 3 topics that are interesting to you that you're going to share about yourself, so at least you're memorable at the Shabbos table. Just being at someone else's Shabbos table is a lot, but making yourself memorable at the Shabbos table is even more important. And everyone's interesting. You can become more interesting, but everyone has something to say. I was at a Shabbos table once. There was 40 people. That was his thing. That was his shtick. He had 40 singles at his Shabbos table every Shabbos. And he used to put out a super provocative, thought-provoking, everyone had an opinion question on this question. And then he used to listen into people's snippets of their conversations and say, oh, I hear something really interesting here. Say, can you share and say who you are and where you're from, because it was in Israel, it was in the old city, and where you're from and something interesting about you. So firstly, the people hear your perspective on this controversial topic, and you're also giving them something. I want to hear more from that person who was learning in Neve, who was originally from Los Angeles, where so you can say, hi everyone, I'm DEVORA KRASNIANSKI from Cedarhurst, and my thoughts on this are, now it sounds a little contrived, but if you know you're doing it for your goal of being noticed and being memorable, then you'll get more comfortable with it. And besides the fact that it's great for general business networking, and it's great for all kinds of organizational networking, which is like the big buzz right now in you go to business conferences and nonprofit conferences. It's always about starting relationships, creating relationships, making yourself memorable so people want to continue connecting with you. So here's an opportunity at the Shabbos table to do it. It's something that's a skill you're going to need no matter what you do, except of course if you just stay home and do nothing. Now, there's that saying that says the magic happens outside your comfort zone. And the magic could be your Shidduch magic, or it could be other aspects of your life magic, but nothing really exciting happens in your comfort zone. It may be comfortable, and there are times definitely we should go back into our comfort zone, but there are times that we have to pull ourselves out of our comfort zone and become the person that we are meant to become, is really out of our comfort zone, because right now we are the person that we are, but all of us are supposed to continue growing. So we have to get out of our comfort zone for that growth. Then we can crawl back into our comfort zone just to calm down again, and then pull ourselves back out. I once read something when I was much younger by Dr. Tversky, and he writes that every time he has a challenge, he gets excited about the challenge because he knows he's going to be stronger on the other side. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's going to be so much easier. I don't need to become stronger on the other side. I just rather my life be simple. That was the 26-year-old me. And since then, I've realized that I needed to hone certain skills. Having honed those skills, I was able to accomplish so much more in my life. My life has become more interesting. My life has become more fulfilled. Yes, it was hard when I was in it, but I had to pull myself through. And so now I could say what Dr. Tversky said, and I see it's true. Maybe it comes with age, maybe it comes with experience, maybe it comes with the experience of having pulled myself through several challenges and gone through several journeys, that I do say, okay, so what does God want me to do now? What is the skill? What is that God wants me to learn? Why is he giving me this? Because I have to learn something. And when I read it when I was 26 or whatever, I was like, yeah, whatever, but it's true. And if you have whatever challenge it is, whether it's a loss of a job or your Shidduch journey is longer than other people, there's so much that you can do for yourself and gain for yourself, and thus for the world, in this time. Moping is not going to get you there. There's so much opportunity in this time. If after a few dates, and some dates feel more awkward, does it mean it's heading downhill and is not a good fit? It might. Now, firstly, I just want to put it out that if you are the one who feels that the date, you didn't do well on the date didn't go well, let someone else know, either him directly or through the shadchan, that date just didn't work well. It could be something really big, that your grandmother was dying of COVID or whatever. I mean, it's part of life, but it's still hard, and you can't present yourself fully. Or you are afraid you have a huge test tomorrow, or your boss just screamed at you and you're afraid that tomorrow you're going to lose your job, so you didn't present well. That could be why the date was awkward. You didn't present well, or the flip, he also could have had any of these situations. So if it's like a one-off, that the date just didn't feel congruent with the other dates, you can ask him directly, is something off? This feels different than usual. Remember, you're also trying to feel each other out to see if we can get along in the awkward moments, not only in the fun moments. So you ask, and remember, it's also a skill that you'll need for if you're a boss or you're a colleague, so you may as well just practice it now. So firstly, ask. If you are finding that the dates are awkward, now it's interesting, I don't know what you mean by awkward, and you don't leave a name or anything, so I'm going to just make an assumption of what you mean by awkward. If it's just awkward that we just can't keep conversation going, then maybe you are missing conversational skills, or you ran through your 10 10 topics that you're comfortable with, and you have no more topics that you want to talk about. But if it's awkward because you feel like we have different values, or we're just not connecting, then it's time to say that we don't think this is going to turn into the marriage. But a one-off, definitely don't make any assumptions on a one-off, and don't make any assumptions. Go back to him ideally, but sometimes you may have to go through the shach, like what was that? But I remember when you go back, you can gain so much more for your own personal skills and the relationship. Because if it turns out that you misunderstood something and now you understand it, your relationship becomes closer, and that's what you want. You want a relationship that gets closer. If you ask the question, you find out that you're even further off track than you thought you were, then you can end it. But not asking and ending a shidduch because you assume or because you don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation will always leave your mind hanging until you realize or you marry somebody else. But in that whole interim, did I do the right thing? Did I not do the right thing? Ask, get more to the core of what it is.
Thank you, DEVORA. I have a question. Was wondering if someone wants to date on her own without any family involvement, since her family is what she calls toxic, and I don't want their influence when I'm looking for a life partner. I'm trying to break the generational cycle, and I need to trust myself and not doubt myself when I'm dating. How do I notice the red flags when I'm already in such an environment and not fall for the familiar traps?
That's a very good question. So there's a few pieces here. Firstly, don't rely on your family to be your advocate, and don't rely on your family to be in the coach role to help you see, to help you make sense of what you're experiencing. They shouldn't be part of that. So it seems like you realize that. And there's nice ways to say it. And if you have to say it stronger because your family is toxic and they don't understand, whatever. But you are your own advocate. But that being said, you should really have a mashpia or a coach or someone really wise to talk through, because you have two things here. You're going through a new experience of dating and possibly bringing in a relationship, and you also have your backstory. So you really need someone to help keep that apart. Whatever your backstory is, whatever your toxicity that you really don't want to bring into your life, ideally you will have talked it through with a professional or a really good coach. I'm a big proponent of therapy, good therapy, the right therapist, because anyone who's gone to a good therapist and gone through it successfully has new skills, has better language, has more of a self-awareness, again, the right therapist. So I'm a big proponent of therapy. If you went through whatever it is and you're on the other side, just to say that I don't want to marry my father, or I don't want to be like my father or my mother, is not enough. You have to proactively replace the default, because you haven't been as stressed as a parent, because you haven't been a parent. So you will likely, even though you don't want to, fall back to some level of the default unless you have proactively replaced it with better skills. And that's what you can get from a therapy or a lot of work. This is Hashem's plan for you. I don't know why you had to go through working hard to get some skills that some other families have just given to their children. But that's it. But if you've done it proactively and gone through therapy, you are probably a very strong person. Every so often you may fall back, and that's part of the conversation that you will have to have about your triggers and whatever else. But how do you make sure that you don't, like they say, sometimes you marry your father even if you didn't want to? That's why you really need to work with a coach. Work with someone who will help you work through what you're experiencing, because sometimes we go to the familiar even though we don't want the familiar. So you need to really have someone help you work through your experiences, what questions to ask, how to make sure. Your dating will probably be longer than what is typical, whatever typical means, because you have a lot to unpack and explore. You want to also make sure that they appreciate you and accept you with all your stuff. And like I said, everyone has stuff, but you seem to be having more obvious stuff. Regarding asking if they have a history, what makes you think they'll be honest? If you were honest all along and you're creating an atmosphere of honesty and you're creating an atmosphere, I want to make sure that you accept me as I am and I want to accept you, They should be honest. I've had girls call me and say he admitted to me that he was involved in porn. Now, if he was involved in porn, should I just drop the whole shit up? That's a whole different conversation. I would say no, right? I would say it's not a clear-cut no. Like, just because he was involved in porn doesn't mean that he's going to be an awful husband or unfaithful husband or whatever. But if you've created an atmosphere of trust, then if you've said straight out, I want to make sure that I'm accepted, the full me is accepted, more likely he will be honest. If he's not, then you can also talk about in your conversations about what it feels like to be betrayed and how much worse it is than the actual. You can say, I have no problem with someone who was on drugs when they were 15. I just want to know where you are and what your experience with drugs was, so that he's honest. If you have a problem with someone who was on drugs, then you have to say, I really have a problem with someone who ever smoked weed once. And if you've set up and if he's smart enough and he wants to make sure that he's accepted by whoever he marries, he won't lie. Just to say that many times people do miss a red flag, intentionally, not intentionally, but once in a while, it's simply siyata dishmaya. There's nothing that you could have missed. They were just that good. So if someone ends up on the wrong side of the domestic abuse statistics, it's not their. It could be that it's not something they even missed. It's just siyata dishmaya. Okay, this one's about profiles and resumes, and I can keep going for a while. After I drink that water, I'm good. So as long as you want to keep me, I'm here. Profiles and resumes. And profiles and resumes sounding all the same. That's the question that came in. I'm not a proponent of profiles and resumes saying anything except for phone numbers and the basic information. The way profiles evolved is like back in the day, let's say the 80s, 90s, people need to say, people shared about somebody, the shadchan called or the friend calls or the aunt called. Even back then, we didn't rely on shadchanim. It could have been an aunt or a neighbor or whatever. But whoever took the role of the shadchan described the other person, and he said, wait a second, I need, so who could I call? Just to get more reference. So one person has to go through her Rolodex, the other one has to go get a pen. And so someone said, okay, I'm a chacham. I'll put it all on a sheet and I'll fax it to you. And so they faxed it. And so that was the origin of these profiles. And then someone said, I want you to remember me, so I'm going to put a sentence or two. And then it became this whole thing that, I can't tell you, I want to know more about more singles, so write about yourself a little bit. What happens with the write yourself about a little bit is like, why do they write this and not that? Why do they use that word and not this? It became this whole Rashi and Tosfos, and it became a big mess. I'm a big proponent of the old-fashioned way of the shadchan describing the person and then sending a reference sheet of phone numbers. And you might include the year of birth, not the age. You might include the machatana or the schools, like whatever basic stuff, but no paragraphs. For example, I spoke to somebody about this young woman that I knew, and so she said, it sounds interesting, send me her profile. On this profile that the mother had sent to me was a paragraph. And when the boy's mother read it, she goes, no, not interested. But she was interested when I described it, but now when she's reading what the mother chose to describe, why did the mother write this word and not that word? And I'm like, so I'm not a big proponent of the resumes in general, and I don't think that you can sift through someone's life in a paragraph or two or three or an essay. So that's my thing. If you believe in resume, because there is practicality to resumes. If there's how someone going to know about me, but to make then your resume has to really stand out. Things I like, things you ought to know about me. I like to do. If a girl writes, I like to do woodworking. You'll stand out for that. Now the guy, it may not be yes or a no for the guy, but it's just to make you stand out. I like horseback riding, or I ran the Chai Lifeline Marathon. Stand out a little bit, not just she's kind and sweet. And as a teacher, I'm studying PT, and I have no problem with teachers and people studying PT, but you're not standing out because a lot of people. So don't read through the lines, because any word that you could have written differently, and just take it at face value at English language. Don't read through the lines. They didn't write this. They're just trying to put down a short summary. On the other hand, I don't believe in it altogether. But if you want to do it, if you want to go along that track, and it's totally reasonable. Lots of people do it. Make yours stand out in the way, physically, in the formatting of the paper. And it doesn't mean that you have to have a picture there. But if you're going to put a picture, it should be a nice headshot. Not, I'm the third one on the left in the pink gown. No, it should be like you put thought into it, and spell check, have someone else read it to make sure the phone numbers actually work. Like, all these little things mean that you didn't take it as seriously. But my most important point about profiles is set it up in a way that you stand out. Okay, a Hishtadlus question. I always love these. How do you know when you have done your part, Hishtadlus, and when you have to do more? On a practical point, if you didn't get the result you want, you have to do more. You're not there yet. You have to be creative. Now, more of the same may get you the same results, but if you're creative, try something new. Try a new friend to talk to. Try a new, and besides, try a new thread of conversation that you want to bring up. Something new. So there's one thing is your dating is becoming stale and you're bored of it. But if you're even to find someone to meet, you have to be creative. For my own daughter, her Shidduch came about because I made a conference call of my classmates, and we just chatted about our friends, about our children, and my friend came up with the idea of her neighbor's son. That's one thing. There's lots of funky ways, but really get out there in different ways, in different places. And not to say that if your shidduch journey is longer, that you haven't done your hishtadlus, but if you haven't got your results, then you have to try something new. Again, you're strengthening some skill. You're strengthening something about yourself through this journey, and it might be meeting new people. It might be pulling yourself out of your comfort zone and meeting people altogether if you're really a real homebody introvert. So if you see it that way, that what new strength am I going to work on as I try something new? It may be, some people will find it as a fun challenge, some people will find it as a challenge, but nonetheless it's something that you have to do. Doesn't mean every single morning, but maybe every single morning. Like they say, there are some people who will go on the subway, or not a great example for right now, but if they really want to network, they will go eat at a different restaurant. I'm talking about in the business world, for example, eat at a different restaurant. And, there's a book, Never Eat Alone. So they will always meet someone and say, can I join you? And sometimes the people look at them like they're crazy. And sometimes they have great conversations and the next business deal comes from that. But they try something new all the time. And being creative and hanging out with different people, or trying an online Zoom date, or trying some of these online Zoom activities, that meeting activities, or someone once told me she's willing to try to meet the mother instead of meet the guy. And I was like, call a vote to her. Because the mother is, many families, the mother is the gatekeeper. And if someone's willing to meet the mothers, I find her to be very confident. I'm willing to try. I mean, I do have a son, so I'm willing to meet people. And I love meeting people anyway. Mrs. Perl, there's actually a really cool way of meeting the person anonymously.
Tell me.
Like, so let's say you ask them really cool. Remember I said in the beginning about personal questions.
Oh, okay.
The game, but I just want to explain it.
Okay.
To everybody. Not what we spoke about behind the scenes. So remember where it says meeting the person personal, sharing personal information. So we can share personal information even without the name of the single, but the moms get to see. It's an interesting profile. Let's say, we ask, what is your favorite thing to do on vacation, and and why, or what So now I'm starting to say, oh, that actually matches my son. Like I do, like if you do 5 personal questions like that, I would love that as a mom. Instead of saying she's kind and she's sweet, and for summer 2016 she did this. Like, yeah, it's especially I I don't want to. I'm totally not boasting, but I get a zillion darts thrown at me because I have a wonderful son. But I get a zillion darts, and they're starting to also look like the same darts. But if I got someone who's like, I get to see like what's interesting to this person and what their life values are. Firstly, it's unique. But secondly, I'm going to see who the person is, not what she does, but who the person in the person is. I would love that. Hey, maybe that's a new way of doing profile. Maybe, Mrs. Perl, and maybe a couple volunteers in the group if you want to try it out, as prototype. Maybe we are onto something new for the world.
Please WhatsApp me and let me know if you'd like to be pioneers in this new profile venture.
Better for you not to be anonymous, but you could totally be anonymous in the way that I'm thinking the project, the way that I'm thinking about this project, you could totally be anonymous, but get out of your comfort zone. That's where the magic happens.
DEVORA, you definitely came out of your comfort zone and did a lot of magic tonight for many, many hours, first to our moms and now to our girls. You really went out of the way. And I want to thank you for your insightful words and your guidance and practical takeaways we really can put to use immediately.